Bruce Fenton again, FentonReport.com. How you doing, brother?
Great. How are you?
Good. Hey, you're up in Massachusetts. Let's talk a few national politics before I get to some Wall Street and some of these 10th Amendment resolutions these states want to push, which are absolutely a waste. What was your take last week on the Scott Brown race?
Well, it didn't surprise me. I kind of called it when I was on your show the day before. I said I think it's going to be very close. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he won. And I think it's going to be very close. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he won. And he did. And it just shows that the vote really does matter. And nothing is ever a sure thing, because 6 months ago nobody would have ever predicted that, but he won it. You could see the momentum here in the last few days before the election. People were that's why I thought he would win, because people were really getting behind him. I mean, the number of people that were out there in the rain holding signs, even coming from out of town, was something I've never seen here. I don't think anybody's ever seen.
Is he considered a conservative or a moderate?
Well, it's hard to say what those terms mean these days, because you have people on both sides that end up agreeing with somebody on the opposite side. On some things, he's kind of with your classic Republican Party stand. I mean, definitely was different from his opponent, and different from most of the opinions that President Obama has. So from that standpoint, yeah. But this is Massachusetts.
Bruce Fenton is well-known political commentator. He's on the Dean Radio program right now. FentonReport.com, FentonReport.com. The president, is he tomorrow night going to try to come out? Is he going to try to be a la Bill Clinton tomorrow night? He's talking about freezing domestic spending over the next few years, talking about middle-class tax cuts. What's going to happen tomorrow night at the State of the Union?
I hope he'll listen to the people. Anybody who blows this off as not a major event doesn't understand politics. If Massachusetts can vote a Republican into the seat held by Ted Kennedy, then not only is the entire nation up for grabs, but the Democrats are further behind than they've probably ever been in modern history. I mean, you're literally talking about it could be the end of the party as we know it. And that sounds radical, but it's happened before in our history. I mean, we've had periods in time when we've had other parties, and the Democrats and the Republicans have gone through metamorphoses, as you know. So to ignore this or dismiss it in any way would be a major error on the president's part. So I hope what he does is listen and say, wow, this is a wake-up call. Some people in our most strong base, potentially his strongest base in the country, are so ticked off that there was something like a 31-point swing between how much he won Massachusetts by only a year ago versus how much Scott Brown won by. So that's a massive swing. I mean, it's not like this election was in Texas or something.
Bruce, what about the political spin that we're hearing from those to the left? What is your take on the reason why Scott Brown won? Was it because Coakley was a dumpy candidate? Was it because people are sick of the Obamacare? I mean, come on, let's play Monday morning quarterback here. Why did Scott Brown win?
Coakley didn't run that bad of a campaign. There's some people making some jokes on some very minor gaffes that she did, but she ran a pretty good campaign. She was a little too aloof, made some mistakes appearing elitist, but she didn't make, it's not like she got caught having a big scandal or something like that. I think the main reason that Scott Brown won is because people are ticked off. They didn't like the health care plan. They don't like the health care plan. Even the Democrats don't like the health care plan, a lot of them. And what people always, misunderstand in America is the importance of independence. In almost every state, including Massachusetts, there are more registered independents than Republicans and Democrats combined. And what I've always said to people is, you win the independents, you win. And people don't seem to get that. Both parties tend to, you know how it is. You've worked on campaigns. They tend to call the same people, if they're Republicans, they call the same small list of Republicans. They don't reach out to the independents. Scott Brown reached some of the independents, particularly kind of the Tea Party crowd, and a lot of the disgruntled independents who aren't particularly loyal to one party or another, and that's how he won.
So basically it was a referendum on Obama then.
Absolutely. People are mad about health care. Some say that the terrorism was part of it. I don't think that plays, especially in Massachusetts. The kind of, Scott Brown doesn't want to be a terrorist hugger. I don't think that plays. Personally, I think that argument's a little ignorant. And I don't think that plays well in Massachusetts, because we have a really long tradition of civil rights and due process and that kind of, and even the libertarians and the conservatives are more kind of like your New Hampshire type conservatives where they say, hey, wait a minute, we don't want the government being able to just lock up anybody just because they say they're a terrorist, because next thing they're going to be doing is locking up Bruce Fenton and Ed Dean because some bonehead says we're terrorists. So I don't think that played into it. I think it was really about health care, the economy, of course, and also just people being fed up with the mainstream. And the one smart thing that he did about his campaign, I also don't attribute this to an extremely brilliant campaign. I think they did a fine job, but I don't think it wasn't that the campaign people worked a miracle. I think almost anybody could have beat Coakley because people are so fed up with the status quo, and they viewed her as, that's the one smart thing he did. They viewed her as status quo. They viewed him as an outsider, and that helped him a lot.
Let me play for you. This is a quick cut. The morning after that, of course, Scott Brown won. This was the Obama and ABC's George Stephanopoulos, and Obama blamed Bush for the Senate loss. Just listen to this really quickly here, okay?
Here's my assessment of not just the vote in Massachusetts, but the mood around the country. The same thing that swept Scott Brown into office swept me into office. People are angry and they're frustrated, not just because of what's happened in the last year or 2 years, but what's happened over the last 8 years.
Wow, I got to take it, Scott. I'm really Bruce Fenton, I'm really dumbfounded by that because I didn't realize that the Obamacare was going on the last 8 years of President Bush's administration.
Well, listening to hear him say that, I actually think, that's a much better comment than the stuff that his press secretary's been saying. I mean, maybe he ought to fire Gibbs and start doing his own press briefings because, Gibbs, at least he's acknowledging that people are angry, and Gibbs is out there saying everything's fine. What did he say yesterday? This proves that people like Obama. It seems to me he's living in fantasy land. Of course, you got to be careful what you say about him, or you end up like some of the other reporters who end up on his bad side, and call you out by name. But yeah, I mean, Obama's recognizing that there's anger. I think they're still in some kind of, in the bubble of the White House, not realizing that people don't like the health care plan. I don't know what they need to get it to sink in. It's the people don't need it explained more. They don't like it.
But Bruce, when he sits here and say, so when the president comes out and says, well, hey, they're angry at the last 8 years, okay, whatever, or the last few years of the economy here, and it's still boiling over, that means that you're still politics as usual. You've done nothing to change from the system here, so no one's going to give you any type of credibility, and the independents are the main group of political people that are sitting here saying, we voted for you, we're not happy, you're no different from what we saw a few years earlier.
Exactly, and the logic doesn't work great. All due respect to the president, because if people were angry, why didn't they support the person that he was up here stumping for? I mean, he came up, pretty major tour. I think he was here a few days, stumping for Martha Coakley, and it didn't work. So if people were, fed up, why didn't they go with his person? I mean, they're fed up, and it's right, they do. And a lot of the biggest criticisms that I hear from diehard Democrats up here, they say Obama's just another George Bush. He's prolonged the Iraq wars. He has a different version of, Bush had the Wall Street bailout, Obama has the everybody else bailout, and they criticize. They say, hey, I wanted change. 70-80% of America is against the war. He's continuing both of the wars. He's cracking down more on civil rights, just like George Bush did with these wiretaps and everything. He's spending money like crazy. This isn't the change they wanted. And this is diehard Democrats I hear saying this.
Bruce Fenton is a well-known political commentator. He's at the Fenton Report Global. You can go to FentonReport.com.